please deliver a warm, loving Lewiston corner welcome for my man, Alex Steed.
Yes. So, hello. This is a postmodern ghost story. I don't know when she started to live in there, but Dominique Dunn has lived in my consciousness for about a decade. And not her specifically, but sort of the specific facts around her 1982 untimely death. But let's be fair, I mean, she's lived in my abstract existence for as long as I've been alive, if not longer. She was one of the building blocks of the so-called poltergeist curse, named for the movie that she starred in before she died, and was sort of defined this idea that people who showed up in the movie Poltergeist were cursed, not including Craig T. Nelson. And so she, going back a little bit, she's this person who, she's this person who died prematurely. She is someone who I became so part of my existence that my friend Sarah, who's a writer of some degree of acclaim, was writing this long form essay about Ted Bundy. And I would check in with her and ask how Ted was doing. And she would check in with me and ask how Dominique was doing. That's how fundamental this person became for me. And I came across her, I can say specifically, I came across her at some point in a Yahoo News group. And I don't know if anyone knows what Yahoo News groups are, but before we wasted our lives away on social media, we would waste away our lives on message boards based on emails. And all these people would come together and talk about Dominique Dunn and celebrate her existence and be like, this beautiful young woman died an untimely death. She's incredible. Around her birthday, they'd celebrate her birthday. Again, I have no idea how I ended up here, but I did end up here. And I kept sort of revisiting, but very specifically what they would focus on was the person who killed her, who only served 3.5 years in prison, which consequently is less years for the amount of minutes it took to strangle her into a coma, which led to her death. And I don't mean that to be grim. I mean that to be illustrative of how actually tragic this person was. And very specifically, these people would talk about where this person, John Sweeney, is now, how tragic it is he only spent a little bit of time in jail, and how are I was not one of these people, I was an observer, I'm just saying what we said. How would we find this person and let his employers know about his past so that we can sort of exact some degree of internet revenge on him? And so going back to 1982 before she died, I swear this becomes first person at some point. Going back to 1982 before she died, Sweeney worked at Ma Maison under Wolfgang Puck, and sort of, if this were another era, he could have been a member of the Top Chef cast. He's sort of an up-and-comer. And after he strangled his girlfriend in a crime, a quote-unquote crime of passion, he went to jail for 3.5 years, came out and started working at another high-profile restaurant in Southern California. And you sort of it's easy to confuse urban myth with fact, especially intentionally if the urban myth is really good. But it's said that Dominique Dunn's mother and famous brother Griffin stood out in front of the parking lot of this restaurant and handed out flyers that said, "The hands that made your meal strangled my daughter." And then he stopped working at that restaurant and changed his name to John Mora. So I used to wonder, like, why are these people coming together to do this thing? This is sort of very strange. And then I finally found some resonances in my own life. There's that erotic tingle of that comes to mind when you think about revenge in the face of injustice. I had this girlfriend who was raped in high school, and she told me about her brother-in-law sort of walking in on the act. It was at a party and discovering it happening and pulling the perpetrator out in the parking lot and doing permanent brain damage to the person by cracking his head open with a cinder block. And when you look at the fact that John Mora only went to jail for 3.5 years, and then look at the cinder block looks pretty fucking good. Because there is sort of like a non-binary abstract piece of revenge that, before we learn the lessons of our lives, we start to equate like revenge as sort of this good substitution for justice when justice doesn't come through. When I was younger, I had this family of half siblings, and one of my sisters was pushed downstairs by her husband. and she herself sort of walked away with permanent brain damage. And it was assumed within our family that was the case. But this person sort of walked away free. You know, he, like Maura, said that it was sort of a crime of passion and it was accidental and whatever. It was revealed by my father later that he used to go down to Massachusetts to where this person lived and sort of like lurked in the shadows with a gun and sort of hoped that he'd come out so he could encounter him and sort of take care of the job. It's a pretty dark way to start your night. I hope your burritos are good. And Dominic Dunn, it turns out, sort of did a very similar thing. He hired a private investigator to go after and look for Sweeney so that he could sort of finish the job himself. And at the end of the day, Dominic Dunn came out and said that he was talked out of doing so. He was talked out of doing so by the private investigator, and the private investigator said it really wasn't worth it. And Dominic Dunn said again Dominic's father, that it became not really worth it to pursue this thing because it was better for his health. And I like to imagine he realized that thing, that revenge is sort of a sloppy substitution for justice, even though justice is not necessarily perfect. And in the end, it's sort of, you know, Dominique lives with me in this really weird way. She's become this lens through which I see a lot of things, especially popular culture, because her trial was something her father wrote about, and he became a very popular crime writer as a result. He was a washed-up television producer beforehand. And his oeuvre essentially set the aesthetic precedent for a lot of stuff we're obsessed with today, like reality TV and sort of, you know, crimes of the century, including the Menendez twins and O.J. Simpson. And if Sweeney could have been a Top Chef contestant, Nicole Brown Simpson could have been a cast member on Real Housewives, and Dominique Dunn would have been sort of a proto-Kardashian. So this is sort of, for whatever reason, a person through which I see a lot of things, both personal and popular. And I don't know how she got in here, but I'm happy she's here. So thank you so much.